Hello and welcome to What's the Story? We're an inquisitive bunch of hosts from the What's the Story team on a mission to uncover stories about faith and courage from everyday people. And to help us do just that, we get the privilege to chat with amazing guests and delve into their faith journey, the hurdles they've overcome, and the life lessons they have learned along the way. Now, if you enjoy our podcast, don't forget to subscribe and sign up for our newsletter on our website, which is whatsthestorypodcast.com. It's your direct line to the latest episodes and detailed show notes, and they all get delivered straight to your inbox. And the best part, it's absolutely free. What's the Story is brought to you by Crowd Church. We understand that stepping into a traditional church might not be everybody's cup of tea. And that's where Crowd Church steps in, providing a digital sanctuary, a safe space to explore the Christian faith, where you can engage in meaningful conversations rather than just simply spectating. So whether you are new to the Christian faith or are in search of a new church family, we invite you to visit us at www.crowd.church. And if you've got any questions, just drop us an email at hello@crowd.church. We're here to help and would genuinely love to connect with you. And now, without further ado, let's meet your host and our very special guest for today.
Hello there, and welcome to What's the Story podcast. I'm Anna Kettle, one of the team behind Crowd Church. Today, I'm actually joined by one of my oldest childhood friends, Ruth Hettler, who I think I met at age 10 or 11, and we did all of our secondary school years together before our lives took slightly different turns. I went northwards towards Liverpool, and she went further south to the Big Smoke in London. But Ruth is a wife, a mum, a friend, and a nurse. She's also currently finishing studying for her MSc in Leadership in Healthcare. She works for a small intercultural faith-based organisation and has been living in Rwanda for the past 5 years with her family. Ruth loves coffee, as I do, good books, as I do, the ocean and mountains, and she is also really passionate about building authentic friendships and also about the importance of supporting people's emotional health too. So Ruth, thank you for joining us today on What's the Story? Really pleased to have you here.
Yeah.
And you're joining us all the way from Rwanda as well.
I am. I'm here in Kigali in
So
Rwanda.
we're kind of fingers crossed that the text stays with us today and that we don't lose each other. But so far, so good. So
yeah.
Yes. We're excited to have you on the show today. There's a ton of things I want to ask you about because I know you've got a really interesting life. But yeah, I suppose we should start at the beginning, really, shouldn't we, of your faith journey? Because unlike me, most of the listeners won't know you quite as well as I do. So should we go back to sort of the beginning of your story and kind of how you grew up and sort of your faith journey? I know, like me, you grew up in a Christian family. In fact, our families lived around the corner from each other, didn't they, for a number of years?
They did.
When we were teenagers. I suppose what I'm interested in is what, if any, were sort of key or really defining times that stand out in your faith journey? So growing up in a Christian family and then obviously that faith becoming real to you as well. Like, when did that happen? And kind of, were there any key times for you?
Yeah, thanks, Anna. Yeah, it's great. It's great to be talking with you tonight. So many things we could chat about together. But yes, I mean, like you, I grew up in a Christian home. My parents were both Christians, and actually my grandparents as well were Christians. So I was raised as, with that, and church very much being part of my weekly life. I think there's a couple of defining moments for me, and definitely one key season in my life was when I was a student. So I went from being in Oxford, where, grew up in the same church, went to the same school, which actually was a Christian school. And then I went from that quite close-knit environment to then London for 4 years, to university. And I remember so acutely, actually still now, even though it was like more than 20 years ago, don't want to admit that. But I remember,
sadly it was.
oh dear. I remember that first year just feeling so incredibly lonely and lost in a big city, realizing I could go anywhere, do anything, and nobody would really know what I was up to in a lot of ways. And that loneliness hit me really quite hard and quite acutely. And I remember I would just fill my time. I just would cram my week and my diary and my life full of people, really. And so that I didn't have to be alone. So I never had to spend time on my own. And I remember a couple at the time who were kind of good friends and mentors in my life, and talking about this feeling of acute loneliness. And they actually really encouraged me. The phrase they used was, you need to run into the loneliness, Ruth. You need to run into the pain, and you need to sit with the loneliness and sit with yourself and see what happens. So I intentionally started to try and empty my diary a bit more, try to not cram it full of people and activity, and leave space. And that space, it was scary. I felt like, I don't know what this is going to look like. But anyway, that's what I did. I've ran into the loneliness, embraced that space. And really, God really did meet me in that space and in that loneliness. And I started to see things about myself and about him. And, the more I got to know him, the more I learned about myself. And really, that was such a formative time of my life. And those whole 4 years really at uni in London were so incredibly formative for me. And I think that's definitely, without a doubt, where my faith became my own story and my own journey. And I learned, I think, maybe for the first time, I'm not sure, that, in pain, actually God really can meet us in that space and in that place, and that good things can come from that. So, yeah.
And it's interesting that you say that. I mean, a lot of people say that uni is quite a formative time in their lives. It's kind of stepping into that adult space and independence for the first time, isn't it? And I know that was true for me as well. But it's interesting that you sort of talk about kind of, that kind of natural instinct that I think a lot of us have, which is to like fill every minute of every day and to fill our lives with noise and stuff and people and things going on all the time. And maybe even more of an issue now than it was 20 years ago. Like, we have such a, this was pre-social media days,
it was
wasn't it?
Pre-Instagram people.
Yeah, but pre-Facebook. But like anything, life has only sped up even more since then. So I think that so many people will probably identify with that sense of like wanting to kind of fill the time and run away from kind of some of those more difficult things like loneliness or feeling a bit lost in a big new place. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because you sort of say that's actually where you really encountered God. And it's interesting because it just made me think of like that Bible verse that says, "Be still and know that I am God." It's like, it's not like be as busy as you can be and then find me, is it? It's like you're more likely to find God in the silence and the stillness. According to a lot of the Bible. So I find that really interesting. It probably really resonates with a lot of people. So obviously that was your that was your journey into kind of going deeper in your faith. And so you did uni in London, and then what happened next? So you trained to be a nurse, and you always had this plan, didn't you, from like a young age to kind of go and work somewhere like Africa. And like, I remember you talking about that in your early teens, and me thinking, I don't know what the heck I'm going to do with my life. And you were just so, had such a clear sense of cool, I guess, for want of a better word. Tell us a little bit more about that, and like, how did that sort of pan out?
Yes, that's exactly the word. Also, that's the word I would use at that time in my life, that, as a teenager, around the age of 15, 16, I mean, that's a story in itself. But in short, I just I sent that word call. I would use a different word now, but we'll get onto that. But that sense of call, that sense of I want to live in Africa. It was especially the East Africa region, which obviously is where I am now. And I knew I wanted to be a nurse, and I knew I wanted to live in Africa. And it felt very clear at that time. It felt very simple. It felt like, okay, you know, I know kind of what I want to do. So I went to London, graduated as a nurse, and was planning on staying in London actually to work. Was part of a great church that I loved a lot. We met in Soho in the comedy. I don't know if anyone's ever been. We met in the comedy club in Soho. And just a really vibrant church, and I loved it. And it was community for me. And like I said before, a lot of growth. Anyway, was wanting to stay in London, but had a dream where I was living back at home with my parents in Oxford, working as a nurse, and I was saving to go to a Bible college. And I kind of processed this dream for a while, reflected on it with good people, with good friends, because, you know, I think whenever we have that sense of like wanting to hear from God, we need wisdom and, you know, good advice and community around us to help us process that and shape that. But anyway, I went back to Oxford, and that was really very challenging, very difficult season for me. I worked as a nurse, which I deeply loved, and ended up meeting my husband. And then really it was a winding journey is really how I would describe it. It was not straightforward. It was not a led to B, led to C, led to D. It was a winding journey of up and down. And there were disappointments along the way. We had health challenges along the way. And we thought we were going to go to one country, and that didn't kind of work out. And so it unfolded in a way that I absolutely did not expect. And moments of really just trying to figure out, what do I really want this? And what do I want? And who am I? And where is God in all of this? But as with so much of life, right, you look and see the process and the journey that you've been on, and God used that time to do so much work in us, as you know, as people, my husband and I, that it was actually a really rich time, although it was also really difficult as well. So I think, you know, as we figure out and look at life, like, who are we? Who do we want to be? I think so often it looks so different to how we anticipated. But that's okay. And again, we find God in those moments that feel like disappointments, sometimes really acutely. But as we journey through them and as we process them in a healthy, like robust way, we actually can see so much of what God has kind of worked into us as people. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I think you described it to me the other day as when we were talking, as like almost like God's more interested in the journey than a destination. Like we're very kind of get to the end of the journey kind of as people, aren't we? We're like, here's a goal. I want to reach the goal and achieve the outcome or whatever. But actually, God's quite often more interested in who we're becoming than what we're doing.
Absolutely.
As people. Yeah. And yeah, again, your experiences really speak strongly of that, I think. It's that thing of like, you know, even though you sort of knew your sort of end destination, as it were, from quite a young age, it took like quite a lot of years, didn't it, to kind of be where you are now, and quite a lot of detours along the way. I find that really interesting.
And I think definitely, you know, Anna, there was a season in my life where I was holding on to this sense of call actually more tightly than was healthy, and ended up holding on to the sense of call actually tighter than I was actually really holding on to God. And yeah, absolutely. It's about the journey rather than like destination, and completely he's more interested, I think, in who we are becoming than actually like the external of what we do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, it's not just the journey, is it? It's like who we're journeying with. It's like, you know, it's that journeying with God. I don't know. There's a lot about journeying with God in scripture, isn't there? Like I can't help thinking of the Israelites and just how indirectly they traveled to the promised land, even though they knew that's where they were headed. It took them such a long time to get there.
Yeah.
You know, and generations of people. And it's like, it's such a, I mean, there's other stories too in the Bible on there, but that's just the one that really sticks out. And you just think, you can really see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then obviously more recently you've been working and living in Rwanda in East Africa. And, but, you know, and that's, I imagine, got its own challenges and incredible gifts all kind of rolled into one, like good and bad, like much of life. But over the last few years, you've had a really big challenge, haven't you, as well, in terms of like your personal life and your family. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that and kind of how that's impacted your faith?
Yeah, great. Yeah, so you know, we eventually, after a detour through living in France, lived in the south of France for nearly 4 years, which was brilliant. And anyway, we arrived in Rwanda, January 2018. So been here for just over 5 years now. And my mum was diagnosed with breast cancer. And she had treatment and went into remission. And then summer 2019, she unfortunately relapsed from her breast cancer, and it had spread to different parts of her body. And she ended up passing away in February 2020, just before COVID kind of arrived, or we were aware anyway of what COVID was in the UK. And I think for me, it's been such a huge journey over these last few years, really. And I think largely because when Mum was first diagnosed, and then also when she relapsed, for me, I never actually asked God to heal her. My own journey was not one that involved a lot of prayer, asking God to heal her. Other people did. For me, as her daughter, my journey was, okay, my goodness, I have to adapt to this like life-changing kind of situation, and actually I have to adjust to the thought of my mum not being with us anymore. That was my own journey.
And was that because from the start her prognosis wasn't great, and because, I mean, was that because, you know, you kind of like this, you know, certainly on paper this doesn't look good. I mean, you're a nurse, so you know, a cancer nurse, so you kind of knew the sort of ins and outs of it probably better than anyone, didn't you?
And just to say, you know, and I'm super aware, you know, I have no idea who is listening to this and who has their own journey to walk. And but yeah, you know, there's lots of different types of breast cancer, and the specific type that my mum had was one that carried a poor prognosis. And I knew that as a cancer care nurse, and I was in some of the initial appointments with the doctors, and had to walk that journey of my, you know, respecting very much what my mum did and didn't want to know, but knowing really times more than she did, but not being able to share with anybody other than really my husband, Paul. So I knew from the get-go that this was a different journey than really now, you know, breast cancer carries like good outcomes because of the advancement.
Generally.
But I knew for my mum was it. And then when she relapsed in summer 2019, because it had been short after her like treatment and going into remission, you know, she wasn't in remission for a long period of time. So I was carrying this, and I think, yeah, you're right, Anna, that because I was carrying that additional kind of information, I suppose, as a cancer care nurse, and was aware of some. And I think just it was just the journey I needed to walk. The journey I needed to walk as her daughter was one where I didn't actually, I didn't pray hard for her healing. That was other people's journey to walk, that they were doing that. For me, my journey was the one thing I prayed was that I would be with her when she passed away, or I would get to spend some time with her. We were living still in Rwanda. And the plan was that I was going to go back to the UK to meet up with her doctors, spend time with mum and dad, and kind of make a plan of action. And most likely the kids and I come to the UK, and, until the end of my mum's life. But yeah, I mean, things didn't turn out the way that we expected. It was mid-February 2020. I was at home in Rwanda, and actually, remarkably, my sister, her husband and their kids were over visiting us for 2 weeks on holiday, just having time together, which was fantastic. And we got a call from my dad, and whereas we expected my mum to have months to live, unfortunately, cut a long story short, she had some tests and stuff done in the hospital, and she'd had a kind of a heart episode that had significantly weakened her heart. And the doctors said, actually, we don't think there's months anymore. This really is weeks. So Dad called us and said, look, guys, you really need to come to the UK when your sister does. So when my sister and her husband, were due to finish their holiday with us, the plan was we would go with them. But then less than kind of 24 hours later, we got a second call from my dad saying, look, there's been a second heart episode. Your mum's had actually now looking like it's ours. Like she's gonna pass away today. So that was very, very early on the Saturday morning that we received that phone call, and my sister and her husband were awake, and the four of us just sighed on WhatsApp talking to my dad, and I just lost Anna. I lost it in that moment. And what I mean by that is I just broke down and kind of disappeared around the side of our house and just like let it all go. I think I yelled, I think I screamed, I think I cried, I think I shouted. And in that moment, it felt like what I can describe as like just a cramp appear just in my relationship with God. I was so incredibly disappointed. I was so profoundly disappointed and felt so profoundly let down by him, because the thing was, I had never asked him to heal her. All I'd asked was, that I just wanted to be with her, but have time with her before she passed away. And, when she passed away, I didn't get, that was the plan, and it didn't happen.
Yeah. And not only that, you went from having what you thought was like weeks and weeks to like literally no time at all. Like maybe months and months to weeks and weeks. And then, just over 24 hours, it also that time you thought you had just
that was exactly
that's so tough. Yeah,
that's exactly what it was. Within 24 hours, we went from thinking we had months, we had a plan, to now it's week, but the plan was still the following week, and from weeks to actually, it's not even days, it's now hours. And had to make the incredible difficult decision together as a family, to not actually go, like we couldn't make it. We were looking at flights, and when the planes left, and at that point we lived 3 hours from the airport. So we were looking at flights, what was possible, and just it wasn't physically possible to within the time frame that we had. So we actually made the incredibly difficult and painful decision of not trying to go. So we spent that Saturday together as a family, on with my dad, and on video with my mom, able to talk with her, able to pray with her, And those were really precious hours, really. But the disappointment for me was very profound, I think is the word I would use. But I suppose to not stay, in that place and in that moment. I think for me, Anna, looking now at 3+ years down the road, really the miracle for me, it feels like now the miracle, like my miracle was not that my mum was healed on, this earth. She is healed. She's in heaven, but that my miracle was not that I got to see my mum healed and her life extended on earth. My miracle, though, feels like I still have a relationship with God and I still love him and I still want to know him and I believe him and know him to be kind and good and merciful and loving. And that feels like my miracle, because honestly, in February 2020, I didn't know if it would ever be possible again. And I remember so clearly, so we flew back to the UK, with my sister and her husband and kids. We went back to the UK and obviously be with my dad and prepare for my mum's funeral. And I remember so clearly walking in the first Sunday morning. We were back in the UK, going back to what I describe as our home church in Oxford in the UK. And it was singing, right? That's often what we do at church. We sing, we worship. And that's when we arrived. People were singing and, the lyrics, the words to the songs are projected up on the screen. And all I wanted to do was just like turn around, walk out again. And two of my friends came and they stood either side of me. And one of them, my friend Kirsty, she grabbed my hand. And I turned to her and I looked at her and I said, Kirsty, I cannot sing. I can't sing these words because I don't know if I believe them anymore. And I don't know if I ever will believe them anymore. And she grabbed my hand and she looked me in the eyes and she said, Ruth, it's okay. You don't have to sing. Like, I'll sing for you and I'll keep singing for you until you're ready to sing again. And it was like in that moment, she gave me the gift of of community, of friendship, of physical presence. She was physically there. She gave me permission. She didn't say, for goodness sake, get your act together. Of course, it's true. She gave me permission and space. She said, you don't have to sing. Like, you don't have to be ready. And then thirdly, Anna, she gave me hope. Like, I didn't have any at the point, but she gave me her hope. And it was like, she said, hold on, I have hope. Hold on to my hope until you're ready to have hope again. And I don't think she really knew what she did in that moment, but it was like in that moment, she gave me those three things, that physical presence, community, permission to be in the space I was in. And then lastly, that sense of, you don't have hope right now, Ruth, but I do. So hold on to mine.
Yeah.
And I did, hold on to hers and many others who were around me, giving me permission, giving me that physical presence, community, although COVID then made that very difficult.
Yeah, for sure.
But, people gave me permission and then kind of enabled me to hold on to their hope. And I didn't have any yet. Yeah,
that's really good. I think that's a really powerful kind of picture, isn't it, in that moment of what grieving in community with others looks like when it's done well. It's like people standing with you or sitting with you in the pain and sort of being there and being strong when you can't be. And that's so precious.
Yeah, it really is.
All of that you've been through, it's just really tough. It's tough because of all the disappointment that you felt in the kind of process and the disappointment with God and feeling like all that time was suddenly snatched away from you. And it was difficult because it happened right before COVID lockdown started all over the world. And so, it was quite an isolating season that you then went into straight after the funeral and when you're still just processing that very raw grief, really. But I wonder, obviously you did process it because you said you came out of the other end, and, the miracle is that you're still here and you have hope and you still have a faith in God. But I'm wondering sort of like, grief is so often, the process of grieving is so often transforming, I think. And in my experience, it can, I work with people who are grieving quite often, and grief is transforming, I think, but it can transform you for better or for worse. And, I'm interested, I guess, in kind of how that grief process changed you, and kind of, how did you process it all, I guess, and get to that point of hope again? And sort of, how has it been a transforming force in your life and in your faith journey? So how has it changed you? How's it shaped you and made you, obviously, you're a different person to who you were 3 or 4 years ago because of what you've been through. So how has it changed you, if you could sort of pin it down?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question and great reflections, Anna. And I think, I think one of the things that COVID took from us, and when I say us, I mean across the globe, universally, COVID meant that so many people were grieving in isolation.
Yeah.
Grieving disconnected from community and disconnected from family even. And I think that was one of the difficult things. On the one hand, it gave me a bit more space in some ways, although, having 4 kids in lockdown at home, not that much space than other, but I think, I just so believe that grief and grieving is meant to happen and be processed in community with others. And it's costly. It's costly because you have to be vulnerable, and you feel very vulnerable and you feel exposed. But for me, such a big part of my journey and my transformation has been about allowing people into my grief journey. And, one of my friends and mentors said to me, Ruth, like everybody at some point in their life will experience grief, will lose, a parent, if nothing else. And, like, this is also about allowing people into my grief journey because it also gives other people permission. It gives others permission to grieve and to process that in community and authentically and vulnerably. I think so much of you when you're in pain, like, we're hardwired to protect ourselves in so many ways. And when we're in pain, we want to protect ourselves. And that means we want to close in on ourselves, when actually it's having those safe spaces, those safe relationships where you feel like permission is given for you just to be as you are. And I think my friend, my family, really did provide that for me. And I think just, lastly, I think, it has profoundly changed me. And I don't know how to articulate this, but I'm so grateful for the change that God has done in me. I'm not saying I'm grateful for that my mum is not here. I would choose her to be here 100%. Yeah. But I'm so thankful that God is so much bigger, right? He's bigger than grief. He's bigger than death. And he redeems everything. And what I mean by that is, even, in my profound disappointment, like he took that, actually he's turned it into something that means I have a stronger sense of myself, of who I am. Right. I have a stronger relationship with him because, I hit the wall of my own, at the end of my own resources. I was empty. I didn't know how to do this. I consider myself, I liked being a competent person, Anna, and I was not competent. I was not able to just get on and do life as needed.
No one's a professional grieving, are they? Until they've done it a few times.
Yeah.
It's, not something we're taught to do even.
No.
So.
But it's like in coming to the end of ourselves, and I know it sounds like a bit of a cliche, and I'm sorry for that in some ways, but when we get to the end of ourselves and when we get to places of brokenness, if we choose to lean into God, if we choose to push into community, if we choose to keep on going day after day, he really does work in a transformation, like in us. And it's somehow so precious, and it's somehow something that can't be taken, I don't believe, from us. It can actually be a really beautiful thing. And that's the mystery of God. And that's the mystery of knowing him. And that's the mystery of the gospel and of Jesus and of journeying with them. And I can't imagine, for me, going through my grief journey without God and without, looking at the life of Jesus. I really can't.
Yeah. And there's something that's, I think, so freeing as well about getting to that point where, it's easy to want to be competent, capable, someone who does the right things, all that kind of stuff. But actually getting to that point where you do hit a wall, you do fall apart, you are angry and, just don't know if things will ever be the same again.
Yeah.
And then finding that God's still there and he's still the same in that.
Yeah.
And that he still loves you even when you look like a mess and you don't want to speak to him and, you're just incredibly angry and disappointed in him. Like, there's something quite freeing about that, I think, as well.
Totally. And I think that's a great word actually to use. And that's a word I would use to describe myself. I think I was somebody growing up who I just somehow felt like I had to have it all together, and I wanted to have it all together. I wanted to look like I had it all together. I wanted to project an image of, no, I'm good. I know what I'm doing. I'm in control. I've got it together. But, something like, there's other things in life. It's, any kind of loss, any kind of disappointment, any kind of grief. I couldn't all together or hold it all together. I could have kept on trying, but at some point, it would have been really detrimental to my well-being. I had to let go. And there's a freedom, like, really in that.
Yeah. And have you found that it's changed the way you kind of relate to other people who are hurting or maybe not necessarily going through the same kind of grief? Like, obviously there's grief for losing a parent, but also there's 100,000 different ways on there that people are hurting and broken in this world. But do you feel like it's given you like more empathy for others around you who are, going through hard things as well?
I think it has. I hope it has. I hope it has. I feel, often like a connection or an empathy to people that are experiencing, some kind of loss, disappointment, grief. I think, it's definitely resulted in me really desiring authentic, like, relationship and authentic friendship. I find it very hard. One of the things I need to work on at the moment, I find it very hard to deal with the surface level, basically, the small talk, terrible.
Yeah, you're like, give us small talk and tell me how what's really going on and how you're really doing.
Exactly.
Especially, I mean, I don't know about in Rwanda. Probably the Africans are probably much better at this than us, but like certainly here, it's like, how are you? Yeah, great. It's just like, it's like instinct, isn't it? You don't even think, I'm fine, I'm good. Yeah, we all do it. It's like, I haven't really got 20 minutes to tell you right now that like 5 things have gone wrong today already. So we just all do it, don't we? We
do.
Math, and we just, it's almost like second nature. We don't even think about it. It's like, hi, yeah, I'm good, I'm fine. But yeah, you're so right. It's so important to be able to go deeper than that in terms of, just looking after even just for your own emotional health, like you say. It's so important.
It is. And I think sometimes we need, it connects with what I was saying before, but sometimes we need that permission, don't we? Sometimes we need, an interaction, a friendship, a community, a space, a conversation where we feel the other person actually is, there's a sense of permission of like, actually, I want to be real with you, and I want you to be real with me. And that builds deeper authenticity and deeper connection. So I think my journey has really made me, desire and long for like authentic relationship, authentic friendship, authentic community, authentic space. And I think the church has a massive call or role to play in creating those communities and those spaces for people to feel, again, it links for people to feel heard, for people to have, be given permission to be real. And again, like for people to hold on to other people's hope if they're not in place yet to really hope for themselves. So,
Yeah, for sure. And I think, different church spaces sometimes do it better than others, don't they? But I agree. I think it's such an important role that the church and we as Christians, as individuals, it's so important that we kind of lead by example on this. So it's something I'm really passionate about too, as you know. So, I mean, I could keep talking to you about this all day. I'm kind of aware of time that we're going to have to draw our conversation to a close soon.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you kind of like reflect back on your journey and sort of, I know, there's plenty of years ahead left yet, but sort of looking back over the last 20 years or so and sort of life up to now and kind of the conversation we've just had, what would you say is kind of one of your big takeaways or perhaps one big lesson that you've learned up till now? If you could kind of distill it down to like just one thing. I know this is like a really difficult question, isn't it? But
it is so
I mean, is there one kind of thing that like really stands out that you perhaps, something I know this, or I've learned this, or this is a motto or a lesson I now live by and I want to share with other listeners?
Yeah, I think it's super hard. When you asked me this question, I was like, I don't know. But I think for me, it would be a sense of like, of knowing God lead me to knowing myself. That, and it vice versa. So like, if I want to know God more, I actually really need to know myself too. And then in knowing God more, then I actually understand and know myself more. And I think sometimes as Christians, we can live a disconnected, life of like, okay, there's the kind of spiritual element of our relationship with God and who we are. And then there's like us, our emotions, our personalities. But, it's like you can't have one without the other. For me to know God is actually to really know myself. And I feel like I've been on that journey, especially the last 20 years, and then even more intensely the last kind of 3 to 5 years. And that there's again the freedom, in that there's a freedom that comes in knowing and understanding ourselves and therefore knowing God more, that those two things are so kind of connected. So yeah, that's what I would say, to know God is to know myself, and to know myself is also to know God, who he is.
There's this quote that just reminded me of, which is, with God's help, I shall become more myself. I think it's J. Bonhoeffer, but I'm not totally sure, so don't quote me on that, anyone. But yeah, with God's help, I shall become more myself. And it's kind of the same thing, isn't it? It's like the two are, God creates us. And so, of course, he knows us better than ourselves and brings us into greater fullness of that, as we get to know him more.
Yeah.
It kind of makes sense, doesn't it? And yes, it's like a lifetime of learning it and doing it.
It is. And it's about, that is connected to so many things. It's connected to processing. We've talked about grief and disappointment today together. It's about processing grief and disappointment healthily, in a healthy way. To do that, I need to understand myself, more. So yeah, there's so much in that, really.
Yeah, exactly. And we could keep talking about this all day. I know we could, but I'm aware of time. So thank you so much for joining us today. And giving up your time and just, sharing your story so honestly and vulnerably with us. I really appreciate that.
And just like that, we have reached the end of another fascinating conversation. Now remember to check out Crowd Church at www.crowd.church, even if you might not see the point of church. You see, we are a digital church on a quest to discover how Jesus can help us live a more meaningful life. We are a community, a space to explore the Christian faith, and a place where you can contribute and grow. And you are welcome at Crowd Church. Don't forget to subscribe to the What's the Story podcast on your favorite podcast app, because we've got a treasure trove of inspiring stories coming your way, and we would basically hate for you to miss any of them. And just in case no one has told you yet today, remember, you are awesome. Yes, you are. Created awesome. It's just a burden you have to bear. What's the Story is a production of Crowd Church. Our fantastic team, including Anna Kettle, Sadaf Bainon, and me, Matt Edmondson, and Tanya Hutzalak, work behind the scenes tirelessly to bring you all these fabulous stories. Our theme song is a creative work of Josh Edmondson. And if you're interested in the transcript or show notes, head over to our website, whatsthestorypodcast.com. And whilst you're there, sign up for our free weekly newsletter to get all of this goodness delivered straight to your inbox. So that's it from all of us this week here at What's the Story. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a fantastic week wherever you are in the world. We'll catch you next time. Bye for now.